Big crowd. All right, well, it's good to be here. I found out just backstage that my notes are nowhere to be found, so we're going to wing it a little bit. This is mostly pictures, so you can follow along easily. Tricycles is a sustainable design company. We work mostly in the interiors industry with manufacturers, carpet manufacturers, flooring, wall covering, furniture. So you can imagine we get into these discussions quite a bit. I want to talk about just a few specific things. I want to talk about innovation a little bit, what that means, certainly in this context. I want to talk about the green product, in quotes. And I really put myth in there to get some attention. It obviously didn't work too well. But then we're going to talk about dematerialization, which is part of our solution to physical products, and then just embracing change. We're in a time of change. And we've all got to embrace that as just part of the natural course of business. Starting out with innovation, a lot of times we will convince ourselves that we're innovating, we're doing something brand new, and we've got the newest, greatest thing. And in any inflection point in the economy, in technology, there's some truly great innovators, and then there's a whole lot of follow-on innovations. Found a couple just cruising through the internet last night and was trying to figure out what to talk about today. This is a mop, integrated with a baby. Truly innovative, I thought. Especially we've got a 1-year-old today. I thought, great idea. The butter stick was a great innovation. Truly great innovation. Combines a couple great things together. This was one of my favorite. This was not a patent application. This was an actual awarded patent for a dog toy. And it had a huge explanation about how great it was to throw for your dog to get. It came in different sizes for different sized dogs. This is a truly innovative invention, or at least somebody thought it was, and even the patent office thought it was. This is probably the main point of the whole talk. That stick, those chairs, this shirt, flooring, probably every object in this whole hall is a brown object. It's not necessarily green. It's a group of molecules that sits there. I'd say the exceptions are, those that off-gas or radiate something that harms something else. Those are you could probably say those don't stay by themselves. But every single object works in a system with something else. And depending on that system, you can determine whether that product is green because it's in a system that cycles on itself or repeats itself, can be repeated, uses the same molecules over and over again, or what have you. So platforms are green. I actually read this in a geeky magazine, a PC magazine in the fall, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's pretend you can imagine this is any product you want. If it's a product you're selling or a product you're buying, it's brown. But let's pretend it's green, if it shows up. Just assume for a minute that it's green. I don't even know what that means, but I can only determine if it's green when I look at it within the system of all the things it interacts with. How is it made? How is it shipped? What are how are the different ingredients for it actually created? Who's buying it? What happens after it's bought? What does that system look like? Some of those nodes in that system are certainly not green, highly wasteful. So what is in aggregate? What does it actually mean for that product? Arguably, it's not necessarily green. Now, Tricycle typically works in a highly physical industry, carpet and flooring, everything physical. So looking at those objects just by themselves is troubling because everything's physical about it. But you've got to look at the whole system that's around those. So the problem is not one of definition. It's one of context and the system that these things are built in. In carpet, there's 4.6 billion pounds of carpet that go into the landfill every year, massive physical quantities. There are more products out on the market, on more shelves. Everything is physical. a lot of people believe that's the only way to actually show products. The internet's great, but I got to touch it and feel every piece. And in some cases that's true, very physical. Everything about the product, and we'll go down the carpet path for a while, everything about the product is physical. And even the yarn's made of oil. A lot of it's petroleum-based products, so it's very hard to argue how green everything is in carpet. But when you look at it in context, figure out what the system is that it's built in. How can you turn the molecules, even the oil molecules, or even all the physical piece of that, into something that's in a green cycle? One of the other problems is, because these things are so heavy and big, it costs a lot to distribute them all over the world, and so you get this whole other part of the cycle, distribution cycle. And there's a lot of them. Just the samples that go out every year, there's over $1 billion worth of just flooring samples. I mean, it's a massive quantity. You think that's a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. It is what it is. So how do you improve on it? Well, one of the things that we try to do at Tricycle is we use this word, dematerialize the physical process and system as much as possible. And I'll show you that a little bit. I'll give you some examples. But the more you dematerialize it, the more you speed it up, the fewer molecules there really are. If you turn into electrons, it's even better, because those are faster, smaller. It kind of brings up, there was certainly a number of earlier green movements, but the most recent one was really electronics. How'd you move something from a physical space into an electronic space or into a digital space? And how did you take the music that you have from something that's always physical to something that's digital? And you just go through example after example after example. Whole industries were built up around this. The whole internet boom was built around this whole concept. Some cases it worked, some cases it didn't. But there was a huge shift to dematerialize a lot of this. Across the board. I mean, there's hardly anything that escaped it, although we have found some industries that have escaped some of this. And even in carpet, there are a lot of attempts, and certainly online websites and things like that are certainly an attempt to do that. But it seemed like late 90s, early 2000s, there were so many websites that tried to do everything and ended up doing very little of anything other than having a good advertising space, because it was one use. It wasn't in a system. But you think the idea of dematerializing the carpet industry or flooring or interiors is crazy, but all those other ideas on the previous slide were nuts until they started happening. How could you put your whole album collection in a phone? That's ridiculous. Well, now it's a trend. And we think there's a lot of things trending that way, obviously. But when we started looking at the way interiors products were made and how they were built, we thought it was really simple. The sample is the problem. There's too many samples going out. Let's turn those into digital versions. Well, you realize that was only one piece of this whole cycle, and it was very complicated. In fact, really overall, it was hugely complicated. This is the simple version. And every step along the way, there was some physical aspect. Somebody's got to touch it. The designer's got to iterate on it. They've got to go market test it. The salesperson has to carry it around. If somebody buys it, it's because they were touching and feeling everything that was physical. And then it's got to be shipped and installed. And then what happens? Well, the cycle starts all over again if it's even in a system where it can get reclaimed. So this is the space that we are working in with manufacturers are our customers as a company. We know, and everybody knows, the physical process in general is limited. There's only, a molecule can only be in one place. There's serious limitations to it. A sustainable process, if done right, if you've created a system that these things work in, creates a huge competitive advantage. If you can digitize part of a physical process, it's a massive change. So the old process that we found, because it's physical, a company would tend to make as few samples or representations as possible because they got to pay somebody to make it, or they've got a cost because it's physical, and so they're trying to save, a manufacturer tries to save money and play that balance. I need to send these out to sell, but if I send out too many, I've spent more money than I'm going to make when I actually sell them.